has one.
Okay, well, that too. Go ahead.
Yes, Dale W6EDT has taken over net control on the radio. So if you can hear us, but you can't talk to us one way or the other, call him on the repeater, either 2 meters or 440, and he will write down your question and relay it on to me. Thank you.
Okay, well, that too. Go ahead.
Yes,
Okay,
Dale
that should work just
W6EDT
fine.
has taken over net control on the radio.
Is that it for the
So
officers?
if you can hear us, but you can't talk to us one way or the other,
does anyone,
call him on the repeater,
general member, have
2
an
meters
announcement?
or 440, and he will write down your question and relay it on
Any
to
of the
me.
MCOM folks?
Thank you.
Okay, well, that too. Go ahead. Well, not hearing one.
Yes,
Okay,
Dale
that should work just
W6EDT
fine.
has taken over net control on the radio.
For the
So
officers.
if
Quite
you can hear
respectable,
us,
I
but
think,
you can't talk
announcements.
to us
With that,
one way or the other,
Eric, does anyone in the meeting, general member, have an
launch our
announcement?
440,
Thank
and
you.
he will write down your question and relay it
All
on
right,
to
Ray,
me.
the
thank
MCOM
you.
folks.
Thank you.
And Tony,
Okay,
as far as
well,
I can tell,
that
you
too.
still have
Go
presenter
ahead. Well, not
status.
hearing one.
Yes,
Okay,
Dale
that should work just
W6EDT
fine.
has taken
I'm
over
gonna
net
go ahead and
control
call
on the
those
radio.
61, which
which
is
is
quite
if you can hear
respectable,
us,
I
but
think,
you can't talk
announcement.
to us
With that,
one way or the other,
Eric, does anyone in the meeting, general member, have
the recording wasn't going? Did you want that going?
Ah, that would be nice. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. So everyone, we're going to go ahead and start recording this.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we are live and being recorded. Off to you, Tony.
Fantastic. First off, I want to thank Eric and the SOARA board for inviting me to present. If you will bear through this presentation, there'll be a couple of skips back and forth, but I think even as a first meeting for you and not being that familiar with presenting in this type of electronic format, hopefully we'll get this presentation off without too many hitches. I also want to mention that I'm very appreciative in my position as well as representing Orange County Fire Watch that the SOARA board and its members support the fire prevention activities throughout Orange County. It is an invaluable relationship that I want to express to each and every one of you for the Fire Watch function to utilize your repeater in areas where there's not traditional cellular traffic or even normal commercial radio traffic, and to be able to use the repeater is quite a benefit to the program. Hopefully today I'll be able to give you some information about a status update on what the program is doing. And if it's the first time that you've heard about the program, then you'll be able to learn a little bit about the program. I will mention that Ray, your president, submitted an article to QST, an excellent article on a couple of our Firewatch volunteers that utilize amateur radio for their deployments, and that was in March, the March publication of QST, and invite you to take a look at that. It was a really good article. I'm going to jump right in and share my screen. Give it a second to launch over, and Eric, chime in if something doesn't seem like it's going through. So my name is Tony Pointer. I am the manager of the Firewatch program. I'm in this position now for about 4 years. I was previously a reserve with Orange County Fire. I have training in emergency management as well as emergency response. Worked in IT for about 20 years, so I'm not too unfamiliar with this computer stuff. I came into the position basically wanting to share some of my first responder experience and my emergency manager experience, and this position has probably been the closest thing that I've had a position that has sort of brought together all the different skill sets that I have as far as working in any one single position. So to start off the presentation, just want to share a little bit about wildfire history in Orange County. Basically, ever since Indigenous folks have been here, we've had a very active wildfire history in Orange County. Most individuals think that some of the largest fires that we've had have been in the last 50 years, 100 years, when in reality, the most destructive and most costly fires have been in the last 50 to 100 years. But we've had fires of significant size, over 300,000 acres. The original Santiago fire that has a little smattering of history, but it involved 3 different counties when it was burning. And growing up in San Juan, I had several Hashiman tribe members that I went to school with. And when I asked one of them while I was a firefighter, hey, what information are you sharing within the tribe about fire history? And one of the elders came back and said he passed down through oral history. They have talked about fires where there was a fire of such a great magnitude that the coastal tribe of the Hashiman had to actually go to the high desert and to be able to escape a fire that was burning so wide and so vast that they didn't want to get stuck along the ocean. So we've had a history of wildfires, and possibly, as I mentioned just recently, some of the most destructive and costly as far as lives and property. So there's no shortage of fires in Orange County. To let you know, I work for the Irvine Ranch Conservancy as the manager for the Orange County Fire Watch program. But at the Irvine Ranch Conservancy, we realize that fire has a place and a role in the ecology. We're not about trying to stop every single fire. We're really about trying to minimize the catastrophic fires that are occurring in Southern California, particularly in Orange County. So in Orange County, there's usually a great question amongst individuals, where the most amount of our ignitions coming from? Are they natural or are they human caused? In Orange County right now, our statistics show that 84% of our fires are human caused. We actually have a very low incidence of natural cause, the most prevalent being lightning strikes in Orange County. So we're the individuals that actually cause the most amount of damage with our wildfires. And it's for a lot of different reasons. Arsonists are only one category, and it's actually not a significant category. Most of our wildfires are started accidentally. The vast majority of them are along roadsides. I think some people are surprised when I tell them in Orange County we've had not 1 but 2 fires started from magnesium golf clubs that have sparked. Am I still there? Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Unmuted.
You're
Yeah, we
still
can
on.
hear you.
Okay, got it. So the Orange County Fire Watch program was actually started after a couple of catastrophic fires in the Irvine Ranch Conservancy in 2006 and 2007. And the executive management got together and they wanted to come up with an idea of how to minimize the damage that actually occurred from these 2 fires that were back to back. Literally, in the work that we do with the Conservancy, we had literally tens of thousands of dollars in restoration work basically burn up overnight in those 2 fires. And so as a way to protect the investment, they wanted to try to make sure that there was a program that they could develop. So they went to Orange County Fire, and first off, they asked for data information. Now, it might be a little difficult to be able to see if you're following along on your computer, but they asked Orange County Fire for the ignition information as to where most of our fires were starting in Orange County. And then when they overlaid some of the infrastructure mapping, they realized that most of the fires in Orange County were starting along roadsides. Those would be catalytic converters that were causing the ignitions along roadsides, hot brake parts coming off of cars, trailer chains that were causing sparks, a myriad of different types of ignitions that were occurring along roadsides. Once they noticed that that was the most prevalent type of ignition within Orange County, it allowed them to start looking at basically a manner of which to try to develop a program on what to do. So in Orange County, most of our fires are caused by humans. I mentioned they are usually caused along roadsides, in and around the wildland urban interface. The other ignition information that they got were the majority of them were started on red flag warning days, the most severe of our fire behavior days in Orange County. So in meeting with the different fire agencies and different partners that were stakeholders in some of the fire activity, the Fire Watch concept, which is not a new concept, there were Fire Watch types of activities in Malibu, in Laguna Beach, and in the canyons. We're literally one of the middle comers to the Fire Watch concept. It is based on, a similar, well-known concept of the fire lookout towers. But in Orange County, the fire lookout towers, for various reasons, was a concept that they're not utilizing anymore. And in the Fire Watch concept, they wanted a little bit more community interaction. They wanted the ability to message to the individuals that were in and around some of those ignition points. So the Fire Watch's program's main points are to deter arsonists, prevent accidental ignitions, and provide early detection. The volunteers that are out there wear fluorescent, brightly colored vests. Their vehicles are marked with magnetic vehicle placards, and they're in highly visible locations. So what they're really trying to do is just make sure that if there's an arsonist in the neighborhood, that the arsonist will potentially have a second thought about starting a fire, and realizing how many different eyes and ears are out on a particular deployment day. It is part of a larger ignition reduction strategy. It does consist of volunteers that walk, sit, and park near perimeters of high-risk areas. But the Orange County Fire Watch segment, of which there are about 400 volunteers now in the segment that I manage, is only one component. The program and the actual activity for Fire Watch would not be possible without the participation of and support from the fire safe councils in the area, particularly in the canyon areas, where they also have Fire Watch activities, and the other landowners that have Fire Watch activities throughout the county. So it is very much an all hands on deck participation activity that share in the reduction of these ignitions overall. The segment that I manage has 36 different locations throughout the county. It spans from the Brea area in the northern part of the county, all the way down to basically just outside of San Juan Capistrano, from Santiago Canyon all the way to literally we have a location that's just a stone's throw from the beach in Newport Beach, when the red flag warning does stretch out to that particular area. That being said, the 36 locations that we staff, again, are only one segment. The partners list gets longer all the time. Some of the partner entities do mobile Fire Watch, where they drive their routes. Orange County Races does a mobile patrol, as do some of the canyon areas and Anaheim. We obviously partner with SOARA and the use for the repeater. So again, a lot of different agencies and organizations partner in order for this to be a successful program. While there are other programs similar that either came before ours in Orange County or in other parts of the country, ours seems to have collectively the strongest response on red flag warning days and seems to have some of the best reporting in the area on red flag days. I'm going to show you a quick video that I think kind of sums up the weather and the component of fire. And I'm going to switch really quick my audio so that you'll be able to hear it better, and then I'll switch it back for you to be able to hear me after it's done. 1 second.
I'm surrounded by Mother Nature's beauty. This mountainside is a prime location that provides breathtaking views, but all these trees, all this dry vegetation, unfortunately increases the fire danger. And as the climate warms, the danger is only getting worse. Now, wildfire season has become a year-long threat, burning twice the area now than in 1970. It's true that these fires, they can reinvigorate nature, but when they flare up in populated areas, they all too often lead to total destruction. Now, of course, weather plays a huge role on how explosive a wildfire can be. And over the past few decades, the climate over the western U.S. has become more conducive for wildfires with overall warmer, drier weather. Like where I am today, the overgrown brush has dried out from the lack of rain, leaving plenty of available fuel to burn. The air is hot and extremely dry with dew points in the teens with winds getting stronger. Now, believe it or not, more than 80% of wildfires start because of human activity. Often it's a stray ember from an unattended campfire or a tossed cigarette that can ignite a firestorm. And it doesn't take much and can spread quickly. Now, climate trends warn that these fires will continue to be more intense and burn longer than just a few decades ago. Now, the smoke itself is hot and races high into the sky, becoming visible for miles. So let's get above that smoke for a better view. Unfortunately, the strong winds are really giving these flames life. In fact, by the looks of it, this fire is spreading at ludicrous speeds and becoming an unstoppable firestorm. Fires like this one can consume up to a football field every second, just like the Thomas Fire did in December of 2017. And since heat rises, fires travel faster as they move uphill. Wind can also push embers downwind and start new fires. This is known as spotting, putting homes on the mountainside in great danger. Wildfires can turn forest floors and even neighborhoods into nearly unstoppable raging infernos with temperatures reaching over 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds carry the thick smoke for miles, turning day into night and making it difficult to breathe. If you live in a wildfire-prone area, be sure you and your family have a plan of action. Residents could have a few hours to only a few minutes to escape to safety. Now, hopefully your neighborhood will never be in the path of a wildfire like this one, but the frequency and size of the extreme fire disasters has increased as the average temperature rises. And scenes like this could become a frightening new reality.
Okay, somebody make sure that my mic is back going. If you could just let me know that you can now hear outside of the video. Is it all good?
You sound good.
Okay, perfect. So along with that fire, when we talk about the catastrophic loss, obviously loss of life just within the past couple of years, some of those communities having an exceptional difficult time just coming back. We see air quality issues with the amount of fire that we have, as well as the ecological loss by the frequency of how frequent we're actually having these burns. In this particular area of Southern California, our fire regime basically says that we should have a naturally occurring burn of substantial size about every 60 to 100 years. As I start to go through some of the dates of some of our current wildfire history, I think you'll see that we're about on an average in Orange County of having a catastrophic burn in similar, if not the same areas, about every 7 years. And part of the challenge that we're having is it promotes the growth of non-native species, and it actually allows for the weeds to push out our native vegetation in most of these areas. And our native vegetation is actually fire adapted. It can actually, when a burn goes through, allows it to regrow in a manner where some areas, other areas, parts of the country, when it burns, it completely destroys the vegetation based on intensity and severity. Our chaparral and other types of vegetation actually come back and thrive with that burn to clean out the ecology at that frequency. Unfortunately, having it burn at that 7 to 10 year rate allows for everyone to say, ooh, look at the pretty yellow flowers along the roadside, not realizing that it's black mustard seed and it's a weed and it doesn't even belong here, and it's extremely flammable when it dries out. So that's some of the issues that we're having with some of the catastrophic wildfires. If you're interested in breathing good air, one of the specific reasons to reduce or prevent catastrophic wildfires, in just looking at, with the asterisk, wildfires on federal lands only, when you look at the amount of particulates in the air that occur from a catastrophic wildfire, we're talking about a fire that's over 100,000 acres, you can see that that we have a huge amount of particulates that go into the air versus normal driving emissions from our vehicles. Our CEO at the Irvine Ranch Conservancy likes to throw out a statistic that he saw one time where more particulates go in the air from a single catastrophic large acreage fire than all the particulates from every vehicle driving on the road for a whole year. So when you look at 2017, when we had 19 large fires all burning at once, some of the ways for us to look at a little bit cleaner air to breathe would be just minimizing and or preventing some of these large catastrophic wildfires. So where do we get some of the support from these catastrophic wildfires? One of the statistics that I shared with you was that most of these fires are fueled on Santa Ana wind days, so they're driven by the wind and not just topography or fuel driven. When we have a high that starts out in the Great Basin and we have an offshore wind event, not unlike the wind event that we're having towards the end of this week, the high is in a little different spot, so it is considered an offshore wind event, but typically our strongest Santa Ana winds, the high is sitting a little bit further north in that Great Basin area, and the wind starts to pick up and travel over the deserts of Nevada and start to come through the narrow passageways of our local mountain ranges, where it compresses the air to really speed it up, where we get our Santa Ana winds, where it's not uncommon for us to have wind speeds on those Santa Ana wind days that are in excess of 65 miles an hour. One of the windiest areas in Orange County, that's in the land managed area by Irvine Ranch Conservancy, aptly named Windy Ridge, we see wind speeds just in the past year that have been in excess of 90 miles an hour. And when you put a fire in front of that wind, it can do a lot of damage, and there's almost no hope in stopping a fire that's driven by winds of that speed. So what determines a red flag? We hear them called via the weather folks and the National Weather Service. We usually start with a fire weather watch that talks about the potential for a red flag occurring. When we do have a red flag that's issued, we get usually some advance notice. It tries to fit these three main criteria: that the temperature is greater than 75 degrees, there's a sustained wind average that's greater than or equal to 25 miles an hour, and the relative humidity is 15% or less. On a typical normal day, these are, not too bad of conditions. But when you add these together, particularly with that over 25 miles an hour wind, we start to have some issues. That is all determinant upon the vegetation actually being to a point, dried out point, where it can actually ignite. So right now, with the amount of rain that we've had just since the beginning of the year, the vegetation is really saturated. And so we're not really going to see vegetation fires start and move to any significant speed or size. But make no mistake, vegetation fires still can occur in Riverside, Los Angeles, and Orange County. We at least weekly right now still have a wildfire igniting. And it's for different reasons. So they are igniting. They're just not moving really fast. Fire agencies are able to jump on them rather quickly when a red flag warning is declared and these ignitions are occurring. So one of the other aspects with the red flag is throughout the state and throughout the country, red flag warning doesn't have to be declared in every single county. In fact, they separate them out via weather zones throughout the state and throughout several states. And in Orange County, we have 3 weather zones: a mountain, intermediate, and coastal weather zone. Not all 3 weather zones are involved in a red flag warning issuance by the National Weather Service. Usually it's 1 or 2, that mountain or intermediate. As long as the red flag event and the winds are strong enough, it will sustain the winds to be able to get to the coastal weather zone. It's just, it's rare for all 3 to be involved each and every time that red flag warning is issued. We typically, on average, have about 20 red flag warning days in an average year. Last year it was a little less than that. A couple of years ago would have been a little bit around that average. Where it becomes a real issue is when we start looking at our 10-year droughts and we start looking at some of the red flag warnings and issuances where we start to see that perfect mixture of really dried fuels continuing to get drier and drier, where we see that catastrophic capability for what's happening. So if we look at a snapshot around the time that this program was originated, in that short 6-year period, we had over 71,000 acres burned, with almost 250 structures burned, over 175 structures damaged, over 200 injuries occurred with no deaths. Orange County is still one of the only county communities that can say we've not had a wildfire-related death in the near time period within the last 30 or 40 years. Every county around us, unfortunately, has had a wildfire-related death. Over 17,000 homes evacuated with a cost of over $31 million. Every single one of the fires during that 6-year stretch were all human caused. Okay. More recently, we've had fires such as the Canyon Fire that was along the Riverside Orange County border in the 91, just started off of Coal Canyon. It is not a secret. It was started by Caltrans using a road flare on a red flag day which is unfortunate. They have since rewritten their flare use policy, particularly on red flag days. So we won't see that happen. They've also reallocated the staffing on what they would do on some of those red flag days with keeping water resources a little bit closer, quicker capability of reporting. As that fire was winding down, you can see in the direction that the wind is actually blowing. The wind is actually blowing towards Orange County in the initial stages of this fire, somewhere around between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. As occurs daily in our weather. There was a wind shift, and the wind actually shifted back onshore and started to blow from the north and pushed that fire back into Riverside, unfortunately. And so Riverside actually had more damage on this fire than Orange County because of that wind shift that nothing could be done about. The Canyon 2 fire was ignited from a rekindling ember from the Canyon fire. It's another one of those aspects where we have almost 4 to 6 weeks later, small embers and smokes that can be on and in a fire area that can rekindle at any time, which is why fire agencies try to keep such a close watch on them. That fire was much more destructive for Orange County, over 9,000 acres and over 25 homes destroyed in that fire. So various shots from the two different fires. It shows the fire perimeter line for the Canyon fire in that shot. You'll notice Sierra Peak in the upper right-hand corner of that photo. That was a high asset value for the county, and so they laid a lot of FOS check to be able to protect that installation. They did not want damage to that radio equipment and therefore the radio infrastructure for the county. So that was something that they were really trying to protect. In this particular photo, you can see how strong the wind is blowing, not only from that deck turret from the fire engine that's there, but you can see the smoke in the palm trees for that Canyon 2 fire. This particular fire, many individuals in the Tustin Ranch area did not realize until those days that they actually lived in the wildland urban interface area where the fire was spotting 1, 2, 3 miles ahead of the fire, and the ornamental vegetation that's not native to California, which is prone to catching fire very easily, were igniting in and around their neighborhoods, putting them right smack in a fire front on that red flag day, which could have been worse on that day. Another shot of the Canyon 2 fire and some of the areas that were burned along Anaheim in that Canyon 2 fire. Residential areas very, very close. A couple other fires that we had in 2018, the Aliso Viejo fire, which was right there along the border of Laguna Beach in the OC Parks area of Aliso and Wood Canyon. That was started by a juvenile. That would fall under the category of an arson fire, as was the Holy Fire, where a suspect is still waiting for charges to be completed for them. That Holy Fire consumed over 23,000 acres. Where it was started in the Orange County area, most of the area burned was in the Riverside and the Cleveland National Forest. The residents of the canyons were very fortunate on that day that the wind was not blowing in their direction. That could have been significantly catastrophic for those individuals if that fire had just burned in that other direction. You can see the smoke is going straight up, so there was not a lot of wind influence. That was more fuel and topography driven. So again, very fortunate that that was not a red flag day with the wind coming from the north and the northeast. That would have been very dangerous and very catastrophic for those residents. So Firewatch utilizes amateur radio communications. If you're new to SOARA or if you've not heard, we on Red Flag Days as a function, as an organization, typically request through the SOARA board and through your repeater officer for the use of the repeater. We thank you very much for the inconvenience to your organization. With us being able to utilize it, we do have a net control officer of experienced amateur radio operators that run the net for that day. It's usually from 9 to 5, not typically longer than that, but I normally communicate with the board to be able to gain permission in order to be able to utilize that. And when I forget, Heiko helps me out and sends me the reminder email if too many things are going on at once. Some of our other amateur radio operators, while they're out there, we have specific areas that are designated better for amateur radio operators, just simply because they don't have great cell service. So again, it is a real pivotal component of our communication in order to be able to report fire agencies if something does occur. We have a formal radio communications plan that is reviewed by SOARA in conjunction with SOARA to be able to make sure that what our amateur radio folks with Orange County Fire Watch, what they're doing on the channel and on the repeater is appropriate to the standards. And sometimes we have radio operators that we get caught where there are a couple of things that happen, and we try to correct those as quickly as possible. One of the other aspects that we utilize for our deployment is we open up an operations center at the Irvine Ranch Conservancy offices, and we fully staff it with volunteers. So sometimes the net control is staffed from that location. If not, we monitor the radio from that location. We do incoming and outgoing phone calls, as well as monitor a new piece of technology that's come out within the last couple of years, the Alert Wildfire system that is available as a public access web page for individuals that want to utilize the cameras. We use them as a virtual fire tower, so rather than individuals driving out to remote locations to be in fire towers, we monitor the cameras within Orange County, San Diego, Inland Empire, and LA, because some of those cameras looking back in Orange County actually give us a better visibility of what's happening in Orange County. We have 2 volunteers right now at this point that utilize those workstations on those big 55-inch screens in order to be able to be an additional set of eyes in remote areas throughout Orange County. We look at all the areas from San Clemente up to Brea, wherever we have visibility to a camera on a tower. Some towers have 2 cameras, some towers have up to 4 cameras, but we try to utilize as many of those cameras as possible to monitor what's going on around the county. And if need be, we see something, we call 911 to report what is going on. These cameras have already caught some pretty significant and spectacular fire behavior. This is the Holy Fire from the tower on top of Santiago Peak with one of the tanker planes laying a line of FOS check-in to be able to try to make sure that they have that installation protected from some of the fire that was in the area. Some of the other technology that we've recently started using are, we use Arlo Go deployable wireless cameras. These are cameras that we can place at areas and be a force multiplier for some of the locations that even with 400 Firewatch volunteers with 36 locations to staff at a couple hours for each shift, we sometimes have a hard time staffing some of all of our locations as well. And so we're utilizing some of these cameras in different areas, and we monitor these feeds in order to make sure that we can have additional eyes, and these do have microphones that we can listen to what's going on in an area, and we will probably be utilizing those a little bit more in the very near future. So what does the seasonal outlook look like? Well, January through May, we had a pretty good consistent rainfall. Our average is 29.6 inches, we're currently right at our norm at 29.3. I'll be honest and tell you the last between 4 and 5 inches, if not a little bit more, that we've received just in the past 2 or 3 weeks have really helped us get up to that average. It is really nothing compared to what our rainfall was last year at 49 inches. But as I'll mention in a few minutes, that wasn't necessarily a good thing when we're looking at wildfires. What we're looking at in the near future between May and July, with the National Weather Service and Predictive Services basically saying that our temps will be a little bit below normal through July, despite having the heat wave that's going to come at the end of this week. We'll have a little bit above normal rainfall, but we'll have a lot more May gray and June gloom to look forward to. One of the benefits for the vegetation is without the sun necessarily drying out as much with that cloud cover, it allows the vegetation to retain some of its moisture. So it allows it to go a little bit further into fire season without the risk bouncing up significantly higher as we go throughout the year and into Santa Ana wind season when it may come starting in August. Now, there's not a real good seasonal outlook past July. And if anyone tells you that they know what's happening in this fire season, I would be the first to tell you to possibly be hesitant. The running joke that I kid with even some of the chiefs with Orange County Fire and some of the other fire agencies is some of the fire chiefs have a tendency to get in front of the media and say, this year is going to be the worst fire season ever. Year after year after year, they make that comment. And sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not. Some things that I will say to you as far as what our outlook will look like for this particular wildfire season is because the fuel moistures are fairly high right now, they're a little bit above average for the moisture and some of these predictive aspects with the weather. It means that they'll stay moister a little bit longer throughout the year. But right now we have a lot of new growth with grass, and the invasives with the black mustard seed are at record heights right now. In fact, this picture where you can see where one of the OC Parks Rangers last year, they found that was a picture with a 13-foot tall. They were recording 18 to 20-foot black mustard seed that growths in some of that vegetation. And unfortunately, when that dries out and those leaves drop off, the orientation of all those stalks very close together makes a fire ignition and a fire spread very dangerous for all the communities that have black mustard seed. Unfortunately, it's so prevalent throughout Orange County, there's really not much that we can do other than try to have good fire buffers and cleared vegetation between some of the communities and recommend those communities to fire harden some of the buildings to be able to give them a better chance of surviving a fire if it is in the local area. So some of the drawbacks to having all the moisture that we had, don't get me wrong, we really needed the rain and the moisture, particularly with some of the plants for them to be healthy, but it also promotes the growth of some of the plants that are not so helpful during fire season. So with last year's rainfall and this year's rainfall, we may not see too bad of fire this particular year. I would be, me personally, in seeing fire behaviors and growths like this, I'm more concerned now with what's going to happen next year as we start getting into our next drought pattern, which it will happen. We'll be in another 5-7 year drought pattern. We might have another maybe 1 year of wet season. That is cyclical for Orange County. We have a couple of wet years, and then we go into what can be from a 5 to 10 year drought period where we start to get that vegetation dry out significantly. With some of that vegetation as tall as it is and as thick as it is, will be really catastrophic for what's coming. So what does Fire Watch look like before we take questions for this coming season? You're all stuck at home because of COVID, and volunteers are stuck at home because of not having the volunteer opportunities. really we're looking at having, similar to SETI, we're looking at setting up for more of the virtual fire watch aspect. What we'll start utilizing are volunteers. We'll start to utilize the alert wildfire cameras and these Arlo cameras, and remotely watch these camera feeds to be able to report any smoke that they might see in the area. It's kind of hard to see somebody driving by that's suspicious in a vehicle, but that's why we have the Arlos. So we will be utilizing technology if and when we have individuals that are not exactly able to be out in the field for some of our Firewatch activities. Heiko, did you want to help out with some of the questions if there are any?
I can, but Eric said he would like to try it directly. Eric, are you there?
Okay.
Yep, I'm here. By the way, Tony, thank you. If we could all give a round of applause in the big room, we could do it, but there we go.
Yay.
Applause. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. So some Q&A. We already had a couple people post in the chat. Alpha India 6, Oscar Uniform, David. We're going to try to let people post these questions audibly on their own. So David, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
You need to unmute the mic, David.
I got to see everybody again, see who's on. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask it for him unless he's going to be coming on here in a sec. His question was, with new cameras on mountaintops, agencies and utilities, is the purpose of Firewatch decreasing, and or can the hams be deployed in another way?
So actually, and we get that question a lot. So realistically, it complements some of what we're doing. The cameras, in the capabilities, as it was described from some of the deployment individuals and some of the agencies that purchase the infrastructure hardware, it can read lettering on a ball cap 5 miles away, but it's not always zoomed into that capability. So Firewatch still has a function in that we utilize the ability to community interact. So part of it is being at the Black Star Gate with individual that might be walking from their vehicle out to start a hike and still have a lit cigarette as they're going to the gate to remind them, sorry, there's no smoking, out on the trail or something like that, or to be able to remind individuals while they're out there to keep their eyes open for any ignitions. I really think it has a complement to what we're doing for Firewatch activities, and that's why at least on the Orange County Firewatch side, we're trying to embrace the technology as much as possible and also assist other Firewatch organizations that complement the network with our utilization of the technology.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, and Bill, K6FRY, if you want to unmute and ask your question, go ahead.
Take it, Eric.
All right, I'll go ahead and ask for you. So his question is will there be a realign of some Firewatch posts due to the new increase use of the interface? Many of the trial areas which saw 10 people a week are now up to 100 per day.
So actually, I try to look at reevaluating the locations every year. In fact, I encourage volunteers, our Firewatch volunteers, to assist with that evaluation because it also comes with growth. As we have new communities come in and get built up, wildland is just changing in its topography, and we always strive to be in the best location possible. In fact, with some of the new communities and the completion of some of the roads, we might actually see some shifting or addition of locations around Riley Regional Park, just because having some of those roadside locations really is a benefit. So we're always looking at adding locations or moving locations around depending upon what the most need is.
Tony, question.
Yes.
I noticed that one of the pictures you showed was the airplane at Santiago Peak, and that was on the UCSD cameras. Can we make use of those cameras to help our situation?
Absolutely. The alert wildfire cameras, in fact, the hundreds of cameras throughout California and Nevada are public use cameras. Anybody can go to that alert wildfire. I've used it on my cell phone, to pad devices, to computers. It is literally accessible to anyone. And I'll make sure that I give the information to Eric so it can be shared. So if you're home and you're in a wireline interface area, I definitely recommend for you to keep an eye on some of those cameras that are potentially in your backyard. Plus, I actually use the cameras all year round. I love seeing the snow on top of Saddleback Mountain on Santiago Peak. So even while it's been raining, I check and see what even some of the road conditions look like by utilizing the cameras all year round.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, Monte's got a question. Monte, do you want to unmute and ask the question yourself?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
You're unmuted. Go for it.
Excellent. Hey, this is Monty from Anaheim Hills. I live right on the edge of everything. So we've been evacuated at least 4 times in the last 9 years. But anyways, does the Fire Watch report wind observations? And if they do, is this important?
Yes.
Right. So in fact, ICO actually participates in the net quite frequently. One of the things that we try to regularly record, not only from amateur radio operators, but from our Fire Watch volunteers that are calling in via our Fire Watch hotline. I strongly encourage any Fire Watch volunteer and or radio operator to become a National Weather Service weather spotter as well. So we do collect that information. One of the benefits of the additional cameras and towers that they put out for not only alert wildfire, but some of the infrastructure upgrade with Southern California Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric has been, they've been adding weather stations to the top of many of their high tension power line towers. And the beauty of that is you can see some of that data and information. So you get to see really the microclimate of some of the areas that, when the wind is coming out of the north, you can literally see some of the areas that get higher wind speeds than others. And when that high starts to move off till it comes out of the east, where then we see a pickup along Ortega Highway in the south side of the county, the south end of the county, into San Diego County, that we utilize that information. And if you're a weather spotter, we upload that information to the National Weather Service. It's one of the things that we try to utilize as data with some of the volunteers that are in the operations center to share with the National Weather Service.
Does that answer your question, Monte?
Oh, absolutely. It's I've put together some information for a couple guys in the local fire department here, and they use a wind metering system I put together and quite frequently, and it gives them real-time weather. And I'm up here in a canyon that it'll regularly blow, about 40 to 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, if you're in the Anaheim Hills area, one of the great things is Anaheim has worked with utilities to add a couple of very keenly, located cameras and towers in order to be able to see what's happening in some of those communities as well. I use a couple of those significantly to be able to see the Gypsum Canyon area, which has a significant amount of ignitions, every few years.
Excellent.
Thanks, Monty. Appreciate it.
Okay, we got another question from Phil, WA2KDX. I don't think he can speak. His question is, why are there no volunteers south of San Juan Capistrano? And then he added, such as Ladera Ranch, San Clemente.
So that's a very good question. The main partners for Orange County Fire Watch are Orange County Parks, City of Irvine, City of Newport Beach, and Orange County Fire Authority. The reason that they don't go past the Caspers Regional Park is because that's the last Orange County Parks facility. We have a partner organization that's South County Fire Watch, that's out of Rancho Mission Viejo, and they have some of the preserve area that's south of Ortega Highway, but they're the landowners that manage that particular area. I have worked with San Clemente and their emergency manager. I've been trying to get their CERT program to participate, as do other CERT programs in the county. Sometimes it's a funding issue, sometimes it's a volunteer issue. We cannot just ad hoc locations just because we want to have a Firewatch location there. So I work with Rancho Mission Viejo Preserve as much as possible to work and suggest some of the locations pertaining to their areas. We're closely working with California State Parks, and we might be close to having some areas that are within the California State Parks areas. We're overlooking some of those areas, but as with anything working with the state, it takes time. So stay tuned for some of those locations, but that's why we kind of end at Aliso and Wood Canyon and Caspers, is because those are the furthest south that Orange County Parks locations and facilities are.
Okay, Phil commented he will get you into SC CERT. I don't know how he's going to do that, but that's his comment.
Right. Well, I know Phil. I know Phil. And you know, as long as I get their emergency manager's approval, we're good to go. We even have a couple of suggested locations for them. I think it's just sometimes making these arrangements take time. Unfortunately, they don't typically happen until after they have a catastrophic fire. Ask the Laguna Fire Safe Council, the Canyon Fire Safe Councils and their Firewatch programs know perfectly well of their hazard. So they've been participating in this type of activity for 30 some odd years. So they know the risk that they have. They're one of the better organized communities to have this type of function. San Clemente knows that they're in a hazard area. Unfortunately, it takes a close call or some damage before sometimes things move along. We're still working in the background trying to make some progress there.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Tony? Just go ahead and pop a chat in there, or if you can't do that, give me a quick hello and I'll try to get to you. Got still 61 people on this meeting. It's a great meeting, by the way. Going very well.
Eric, if I may ask a question. Tony, early on in your presentation, there was an aerial photo of a fire, and it looked like a very old aerial photo. Can you tell me a little more about it?
Was that at the very, very beginning of the presentation?
Yes.
Got it. So it's hard sometimes to get photo documentation of some of our fires, but that was 1967, the Paseo Grande fire. That was in Tustin. That was right on the edge of what we would consider canyon area at the time. But as I've been trying to gather more information about some of our more historical fires, that's one of the oldest fire photos that I've been able to gather from the Orange County archives. If you have any more, I'll take a copy of them.
Thanks. If I find something, I'll be glad to share it with you.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I have a question. I'll direct this towards, I guess, Heiko first and possibly you, Tony. So we've got a lot of hams out there, obviously, and this is ham radio related. People who are not involved in OC Watch, but happen to have a good set of observable eyes. When there is an OC Watch on the air, and we can hear them every hour, they're doing, check-ins. Let me start with Heiko first. How can other eyes and ears help you out, and how would you like them to help you out on the air or not help you out? Can you kind of go with that?
Well, with Tony's permission, when we do run a fire watch on the 447180 repeater, and if necessary, we could actually even link that one to the 2-meter one. But basically, every hour, whoever's the net control asks and starts by asking for the fire watch volunteers who are in position. After that, they ask for others out there who are in areas, and so on, so on. If you want to give your information, Tony can give you all the details, but basically wind speed, wind direction, if you have availability to the humidity and the barometric pressure, those are all important parts. And your location is important because we can't cover all the areas. And with your permission, Eric, I'll send it over to Tony, not Paul.
Go ahead.
So Heiko's exactly correct. Anyone can participate on the net as long as they're a licensed amateur radio operator. We had one issue a couple of years back, but we've since fixed that. We have, and I don't know if he's a member of your group, we have an individual who is on the net reporting from Trabuco Canyon, I think almost up in Holy Gym. We've had individuals report from over the side of the hill. What's that, Heiko?
I'm sorry, that's KG6QCI Dave, and he, the fire situation in Trabuco Canyon is very important to him. So
Right.
yes.
Yeah, so he's staying on top of it, and he reports in when we have the reporting. It gets documented, and we utilize that as far as intel. We look at weather locations throughout the county, and like I was mentioning, we have someone else who's on the other side of the hill in Riverside that every now and then will hear reports from the Riverside side as well. And the reason that's important is fires don't know county borders. A fire that starts in Riverside with it's fueled by the Santa Ana wind is going to be in Orange County in very short time. So being able to know what's happening in Riverside County before a fire hits Orange County or what the weather is like on the other side of the hill is extremely important in having that situational awareness. So it really doesn't matter where you are during that roll call when they're taking other areas. Feel free to chime in.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm sure property owners and people, I believe George, I could be wrong. I know someone's got property, a few people property up in the Big Bear area, so they all know about prepping your property and having your defensible space, and it's actually mandatory or you get fined if I'm not incorrect about that. Anybody have a comment about that?
You're absolutely right.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. I forget, what is defensible space?
It's something like 200 feet from your structure.
Okay. So,
Right, so it's clearing out that dead vegetation that needs to be picked up, thinning out some of the living dead vegetation so that it doesn't spread and ladder effect between fuels. And basically to be able to give the structure a surviving chance. It's actually being promoted right now that your structure should have survivability without firefighters there, because in most typical conflagrations, there are not enough firefighters to go around, and some areas are not safe for firefighters to be in. They'd like your dispensable space around your structure to survive a fire front, go completely over it, and have some moderate cosmetic damage, but the structure surviving basically intact.
now I have another question. You were talking about the mustard that grows, and I travel down Alicia to go to work, and I see enough of it grow on the side of the hills there in Laguna Hills. And it does appear that they go in and do remove that in some areas, but some areas they don't. Is there an effort to try to remove that stuff to get at least the burnable stuff knocked down before it can be a problem?
Right, so that's our annual battle, is clearing enough vegetation to basically provide fire breaks and fuel breaks. around areas that would potentially get damaged from a fire front going through. And that's done by human work crews and four-legged work crews in the form of goat and dog and human teams. On the Irvine Ranch Conservancy, we use goats for some situations. I'll be honest, goats don't work in every situation. Sometimes they're not economical. We only use them in really areas where we want them to eat the invasives. If you leave a typical goat or a herd of goats in an area, they'll eat every living vegetation down to the ground. We would like to at least retain the natives, which is why we use the human dog team. And the human keeps an eye out on the goats and sends the dog to keep the goats from eating the native vegetation. So different communities use different tactics. That's just the tactic that we use at Irvine Ranch Conservancy.
Thanks, Tony. And Ray, I see you got your mic unmuted. Did you have a comment or question?
I was just saying that the Orange County Fire Authority has a hazard reduction program that deals with a lot of the areas, especially like the ones you talked about, Eric. But it's a legal process, and typically those are privately owned lands, so they are inspected. They are identified that a hazardous condition exists, and then the landowner has to be given a reasonable opportunity, and the courts have said that can be up to 90 days to take some action. If at the end of those 90 days they have not taken action, then the county can arrange for a contractor to come in. However, these contractors are rather busy, so they may not be able to get to it for another 30 days. So it's not unusual to have a hazard exist all through fire season just because of the legal requirements of the process, because you have to give people 30 days notice and then 30 days follow up and their final 30-day notice before the county can then move to bring in a contractor. So it's slow, sadly, but that's the system we're forced with the legal system.
Ray, since I got you on the mic, Charles Hightower posted a comment in the chat, and I think you'd probably be the person qualified to answer that. It says Utah is trying to reduce costs of fighting forest fires by having local communities become certified fire prevention organizations. Does OCFA have a program like this?
Yes, it's called Orange County Fire Watch. They're one of our partner agencies, and we get a lot of support and backup from them. So yes, Tony will concur with, will verify that.
Eric, question.
Yes.
The question is, what is Utah looking for? Observers or firefighters?
That would be my question as well.
Yeah, Charles, if you want to unmute and jump in on that and maybe clarify your question a little more, go for it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Eric. Yeah, this is Charles Hightower, KC6FZY, San Clemente. Yeah, I'm a member of the fire board up there in Duck Creek Village up in southern Utah. And the fires in Utah have just cost the state, federal government, local communities, it almost bankrupts them up there. So what the state legislature did was to develop a program called Community-Wide Fire Prevention Program. And by having various homeowners associations, small towns, individuals adhere to some procedures and requirements, you know, like fire prevention areas and that sort of thing. They will come in there, certify that. And once you're certified, then the state will allocate funds to the various organizations so they can bring people in to clear weeds out, cut trees down. And it's done in conjunction with the Forest Service. It's done in conjunction with all the other emergency organizations there, fire and so forth. So basically the objective there was to get everybody involved in prevention of fires, both in the urban areas and urban interface areas, and cut down the total cost of cutting the fires, because it's really going to bankrupt the state if it continues like this. Back to you.
So between the landowner and the municipality, something that California has that's exceptionally strong are the fire safe councils. And it sounds like Utah is finally starting to move in that direction. A fire safe council is made up of those homeowners associations, those at-risk communities, bringing together landowners as well as residents, individuals that use the land as stakeholders, and those fire safe councils are really that glue that holds all of that together. If it were not for some of those fire safe councils, firefighters cannot do all the work themselves. Yes, firefighters put the wet stuff on the red stuff, but particularly in our program, we like to say that wildfires are a community problem, and the more that residents take a look at the seriousness of it, as well as homeowners and landowners that are trying to protect their property and in turn protect the houses and the natural environment that we have, it really is a connection with those fire safe councils, the fire agencies, and those municipalities for it to kind of come together. Utah might just finally be maturing to that point. It has been successful in California, and California could actually do a better job at it with even more fire safe councils, because to be honest, south end of Orange County really doesn't have anything like that. The communities in the south end of Orange County could really take a page from the Canyons and Laguna and Tustin, those areas that have known wildfire danger, for the last 50 years, basically.
Tony?
Yes, sir.
This is Ray. One thing you might mention and might dovetail into this as well is that the number of public outreach programs and the kinds of venues that we give them at with Firewatch, and in terms of public education, fire prevention.
Right. So what Ray's talking about is we actually do just as many Firewatch outreach activities at OC Parks openings, at safety fairs, disaster preparedness expos. We have, anywhere between 25 and 30 events annually, which is about how many days we actually have for deployment. So we really try to use a public education component with sharing materials from the different fire agencies around the county and the different fire safe councils and things like that, to be able to promote the overall wildfire awareness throughout the county. So our public outreach and communication is a big component. We're trying to make sure that the normal public, not just the residents in a certain area, know what's happening with wildfires in their area.
Okay, anybody else comments or questions for Tony or anybody else that you've heard?
So Eric, if Bill is on, are we going to have a raffle tonight?
That's a good question. We didn't talk about raffle tonight. That's kind of hard to do when there's no money being taken. I guess you could have to set up Venmo or something for that.
Thanks, Eric.
Tony, if I may, I'm going to go ahead and share screen real quick here. There we go. So you can go to this webpage right here, I believe, if that sounds about right. There's some information there about Orange County Fire Watch and volunteering for it, as well as a whole bunch of other things here you could take a look at. This is letsgooutside.org. This just happens to be where I landed, and I know you posted one on there as well, Tony.
Right. If you go on Let's Go Outside or orangecountyfirewatch.org will take you to that page as well, or you can email me.
Very good. Tim says PayPal. We could do raffle by PayPal. That's funny. Guys, I'm reading some of your chats. A lot of positive comments about the meeting we had tonight, given the fact we can't meet together at the Murray Center. Tony, again, thank you very much for your presentation, and I appreciate the time you took to meet with us on the side to make sure technically we could kind of get these things rolling, and it worked great. I'm very impressed.
Eric, go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, my pleasure. SOARA supports our activities tremendously. I'm happy to share our time and efforts with you guys anytime.
All right, thank you. And Ray, I'll give it over to you. You have something to say?
Well, I just noticed high count was 67, which we don't get that many at typically at a regular meeting. It's usually in the 50 range. So I think it was very well attended, and I'm very pleased with how smoothly everything went. So other than I couldn't keep my camera on, but that's probably a plus in reality. So thanks everyone.
Right.
Go ahead.
I have a favor to ask. Can you go over to the Murray Center and sign us in for that many people?
I don't think they really care at this point, but yeah.
No, I agree. This has been a large quantity. I don't know if the rest of you have watched, but I'm looking at all the folks who are checking in, and I see call signs I've never seen before. So I'm very happy, and I'm very grateful for everybody to check in.
Yeah, I am too. And there was some concern about this being a very open room. And unfortunately, I don't think I have the controls to lock the room and allow people to knock and come in so we can get just initial presenters in first. So I'll have to do a little more homework on that. It's probably a higher paying feature or something. But other than that, I think it worked really well. And I think we can do this again. Absolutely. And yeah, we still got 53 people hanging on our every word.
Eric, thank you. And
hey, while I have it though, I do see Mr. Spielman is on there. Charlie, did you want to do a plug for Aries Races? Because it's that's emergency stuff. Give you a moment. There you go.
Hi, this is WA6RUZ. Like everyone else, we're not having our usual meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, but we will probably be doing another net on this 440 repeater, and maybe doing something along the line of a simplex test like we did last month. This WA6RUZ, back to you.
All right, it's almost like running a radio net, isn't it? Okay, well, that's all I have. Is there any last comments, suggestions, anything like that? And also, if you guys got any hints on how to make this better, feel free to email me, w6ine@soara.org. If they're negative comments, I'll read them, and I promise not to take them personally, but I may not invite you back. No, I'm just kidding. Anything you think we can make it better, I'll take the suggestions and see what we can do about it. And I think we'll keep this format for as long as we need to, if everyone else is in agreement on the board with that. And we can talk about that later on the side. All right.
Eric, Heiko.
Yes.
Thank you much. And for those of you who have negative comments, send them to Whiskey 6 India November Yankee at SOARA.org. Otherwise, send them to Whiskey 6 India November Echo. Anyway, this is Heiko, your favorite and not so favorite communications director. I want to say thanks to everyone who checked in. One, we had more. Two, we had more call signs that I've never seen before, and I'm grateful because I like that. And that's a good sign. So again, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Eric. You guys did a marvelous job. 86Y, cheers.
Okay, and before we go, K6UVR has been live streaming this on YouTube, and it seems to be working really well. Steve, did you want to make any comments about that, and we'll be able to save this video? All right.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And we've recorded this meeting, so once it processes all this recording takes a little time. I'll go ahead and post it on somewhere on our website. I have to figure out where we're going to put that at the moment, and you can go back and review it for a little bit of time, I guess. Okay, well, if that's all, I'd say we adjourn the meeting and go grab another refreshment.
Thank you, guys.
Good
Night, everybody.
If anyone, Eric, if you can maintain contact if anyone wants to stick around and talk about club things, I'd be willing to do that.
Sounds good. All right, I'm going to stop recording at this point.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
That's a good
Okay.
thing.
So if anyone wants to stick around and
So really, you guys had no idea that while right in the middle of the presentation, one of my distraction points was my daughter went to go heat some soup up in the microwave and blew the circuit. And I was like, that's why I was like, am I still on? I'm like thinking to myself, is my router on that circuit? I'm like, oh no.
Tony, we had no idea. We knew you were still on. What else was there?
Oh, I was just like, she was mortified. She ran out of the room because she was mortified. So very funny. I'm just like looking around like, okay, what's off right now? Because we heard the circuit pop. So
I didn't. Anyway, hey, great
I was
presentation.
wondering why you turned blue.
okay, I just gave everybody the ability to turn on their webcams now. I know some of you, Tim, apparently especially, is itching to show
Hi,
himself.
Tim.
So,
Eric, with your permission, may I take it over?
yeah, go ahead.
That way you can go get a drink. Tony, thanks much. If you want to stick around, there may be more questions. If not, make sure that the microwave doesn't blow up again.
I may just stick around in the background and then I'll drop off when I need to. Thank you, sir.
Okay. And as everybody knows, I'm the communications director. So when management is not in charge, I am. Tim, you said you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I was just saying, I'm not trying to expose myself. I just like, I'm on video calls with 400 or 500 people during the week, and it seems to work okay. I want to see how this thing works.
Well, what do you think? Does it work?
You're looking, your stream is looking good. I think Eric's stream is looking good, and so is Paul's and Tim Stone and Alex. I think when I'm looking at myself, I see this jittery stuff going on. So I don't know what I look like to you.
You look like to me, but the movement is abrupt and not smooth.
Okay, well, that's probably my hardware. But you guys look great.
Thanks, appreciate it. Okay, first, at this point, let me ask if anyone has anything that they would like to expound upon, after which I will take my turn.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you, Eric, for all your work. It's great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. Possibly while we've got a lot of people in the room, this might be dangerous to do so. We can maybe throw a little bit of thought out there about what field day may or may not look like this year.
Don't everybody talk at once.
It takes time to unmute a mic, Heiko. Did you see my email as a response to Lori's concerns? And also, did you see her concerns, which are very valid?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And did you see my response? And so now we need to do some homework again. I think it's very likely, I think we can be assured that field day will be very unusual. It won't resemble what we're used to, probably hardly at all, if we stay within the state of California guidelines, as well as the community guidelines, whatever community we end up in. So I think probably the biggest thing is finding a piece of property that will allow us to have quite a bit of room so we can have good, solid social distancing. I don't think we're going to be able to put up the big towers or any of that kind of thing. Obviously, it can't be a public property. They're basically all closed. So anyway, it's going to be a very sparse, I would think, or what would we call it? Lean and mean field day.
I do have something to offer up a little bit on that. At least right now, it's the first thing I have, if I may.
Sure.
I did reach out to one of our HAM members who doesn't normally participate in the meetings and such. And he works in Irvine, has his own company. well, I could just go ahead and say who it is. It's Chris Carbajal, K6KJ, or Kilowatt Jeep, as he likes to say. He is a Jeep guy. Pyramid Communications. It's down there past the animal shelter area and where you dispose of your electronics there in Sand Canyon. He has agreed that so long as the state guidelines, we could possibly use his site to set up some field day activity on the down low, have access to restrooms, possibly even have access to his roof. There is some downsides to it. There are power lines that run down by the railroad tracks, and he says they do generate noise. And what was the other? I think that was probably it. Mostly that. It's and at the elevation, of course. It's, I mean, you know where Sand Canyon and the 5 freeway is, so it's not exactly a high spot. But being that's the only thing that's come up at the moment, that is a potential that we could use. Just got to wait and see how. I don't think this thing is gonna be this restrictive going 8 weeks out. I think we're gonna lift up a bit and be able to move around a lot better.
Agree.
Comments from the audience?
Well, I was wondering, I heard rumors online about people doing field day from their own home.
That is definitely doable. It will, but under the field day rules, we won't be able to do it as a club. Clubs have to
I heard that they were going to change some of those rules.
They have adamantly, and as of, when was the answer you received, Heiko? It's the same answer I got a month ago.
I received it early this morning from the ARRL headquarters. Nothing has changed.
Exactly. And not only does nothing change, they do not anticipate any rules changes. A number of them have contacted them. One simple thing for us would be to allow the 1,000-foot radius, or circle rather, diameter circle regulation. They say 300 meters, 1,000 feet. All club transmitters operating under the same club call sign have to be within that 300-meter circle from one another. And obviously when we're at a park or whatever, it's not an issue at all. But if each of us were at individual homes, that's the one real stumbling block. The other thing is, if we're going to do what we do, a 3A, people operating from homes would have to be operating on some kind of alternative power generator. That, if you're a pure battery, that's a different class. So for the A class, you have to be on non-commercial power generator, solar, something, but not strictly battery to maintain in class. So the other thing is, any antenna you used would have to be temporary, put up merely for the purpose, or expressly for the purpose of field day. In other words, if you had a vertical mounted on your shed that you use every day, I picked that because that's what I have, or that kind of thing, or a dipole or a long wire that you have had up for a year or two and left there. If you want to follow strictly the rules, you could not use that antenna. You would have to erect an antenna specifically for field day at the beginning of field day. That's part of the emergent. The ARRL, in spite of the fact that they publish rules, publish scores, have classes, all these things, is adamant that it is not a contest. They have hammered that over and over during our exchanges with them. It's to demonstrate our ability to operate under adverse conditions. So there we go.
Ray?
I feel like I'm in the Brady Bunch.
We are. May I have the floor, please?
Yeah.
Okay. And I agree with Ray completely on this. After Ray had made his initial attempt to talk to the ARRL about this whole thing, and they kept saying, no, this is not a contest. This isn't real. It doesn't count. But most of their participation comes from clubs. So if you're going to say, okay, all of you clubs, you're working under all of these rules, but you're also working under the rules of your various states, counties, and whatevers, guess what? it's not going to work. Now, we're lucky, thanks to Charlie and Mission Viejo Aries Races, we can set up as a races station and be under the umbrella of important real live things and do it that way. We can do that if we want to. And if Charlie agrees, obviously, because they are an emergency communications group. And therefore, they're going to be allowed, no matter what the governor says, they're going to be allowed to do what they need to do to keep communications active. That is one aspect. My personal opinion is between now until the time that everything settles down to where I feel safe to go out, I'm going to minimize any and all of my interest in this. Anybody else?
Well, Greg's got a question.
Good idea.
My concern there is, will the city allow it? And and that's going to be the key. Right now, we've been told we can't use the park. I don't know to what extent Mission Viejo parks are closed, whether they're completely closed, the parking lots are locked, that kind of thing, like they are in my area. I don't know. So that's something to find out at least.
May I throw out a curveball?
Go.
Okay, curveball being, okay, let's in the sense of safety, and as we know, most of us are well over 65 or at least 55. And if anything ever happens, we're going to be the first bunch to go south. Rather not going south, I'm going to try to avoid everything. How about we, for this year, and just this year, we do individual operators and under the SOARA banner and say, here, dear ARRL, these are all of our operators operating under safe conditions. This is our score. And I don't know whether they'd like it or they wouldn't, but it would give us a way to get out from under without trying to kill each other.
Well, here's a question. I don't know if you guys are looking at your chat windows. Greg Unra, are you on a mic, Greg?
No, but he's not on my chat window.
I am, yes.
So your question, and one of these guys will probably answer it better than I, is working as independent stations as a club effort. Is there any, how about it, Ray? Is there anything along that line that still qualifies us somehow? A bunch of
No.
No. Okay.
Technically, no, because of the 1,000-foot or radius rule. Unless we wanted to ignore that.
Right. Okay. That answers your question, Greg. It's that 1,000-foot rule.
Hey,
I think we're going back to my original plan A and plan B. You know, plan A if things don't change, and a plan B if they do change.
Laurie, I'm with you.
Yeah, if plan A is we can't get together, and you're absolutely right on that, it would be, we put ourselves legally at risk. Who's whistling? Someone's whistling.
Weren't me. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Well, come June, I'm gonna just share this screen real quick and show you guys. So right here is where Pyramid Communications is. You guys see that?
Okay.
Okay. This is Chris's building right here. There's actually a building here now, so it's an old photograph. Where we would be right in, probably in this parking lot along here, which does have a fence. And then there's a little bit here, but he did say there's possible roof access. And that's not his building there. So he's just here.
How about that big grass field right across the street?
Forget it.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? If we could do that. I believe this is the railroad track running along this way. I think
Oh,
that's
my
what that
soul,
is.
like that. Yeah, KN6 ENZ, love that.
Yeah, so there's he said there's power lines around here somewhere, and it does throw up some noise. He does run a ham radio out of there when he has time. But that would be that.
And put it this way.
Well,
Eric,
don't we think that if we're allowed to get together as a group by June, Gilleran's going to be open?
Gilleran won't be open because the city has said they won't open it.
Till the end of June, they said it's closed. So we're gone.
What,
Now Lori, they may change their mind. But
so even if Newsom opens things up in May, they won't open.
No.
Well, they could change their mind, sure, but at the moment our permit's been pulled.
Yeah. I talked to Marcelo. I emailed him, and basically it's a city thing. The city says no. If they change their mind, yes, then we can do it. And if they change their mind, I'll be happy. Okay, Lori, where'd you go?
She's still muted. She has nothing else to say.
Okay. Anyway, Lori, thank you very much, and I agree with you.
Oh, now she's unmuted.
I didn't have anything else to say. No.
It's okay.
I only unmute when I have something to say.
Lori, you're a woman. Trust me.
Speechless.
I just think that if Newsom opens up the state in May, Mission Viejo's probably going to take a look at opening the park up sometime in June.
I'm sure they will.
So I know that's a.
Yeah. As soon as the governor says you can do your thing, they're going to, because they need the money.
I'm
Nope.
back.
Now, but
For some reason, I'm not catching everybody. It says I got everybody, but I don't see everybody.
So, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Technical problems on my side. So you know, I did tried to do Winterfield Day. It was a good learning experience because it was not very successful, but I learned what it took. So I am now able to deploy anywhere I want with a 30-foot vertical in about 5 minutes.
We'll take it.
75 through 15 meters. 10 is probably not bad. I haven't really done it. There's nobody to talk to. So I'm inclined just to head out, find the highest ground I can that day. Maybe Maple Springs if it's open, or who knows. I would certainly be willing to work with other people and kind of show them what I know and help get set up. Similar situations. I had FTL. I don't remember if he's on still.
Yeah, he's on.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. There you are. Yeah. You're way. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Alex. Yeah. Love that call sign though. We, got to tell people we're faster than light. That was because we used his call sign. But
my son inspired this. He said it faster than light. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
But that's an option, and if you just post it on your website, and maybe ahead of time, just go to other amateur radio websites and say, okay, here's what we're doing. Can you top that? I
agree.
How do you make fun out of it?
Okay,
We have to.
yeah, there's a
But
couple. If we wanted to do it as a club, that gets tricky again. Where's your radio installed?
It's in my truck, but,
Okay,
but
so
it wouldn't.
technically you're a mobile station, and that would not qualify as a club station.
Well,
Well,
if
right.
he's sitting still, it's not mobile.
He can park it.
Yeah.
But like I say, which
Exactly.
which I could. Yeah, so that
Exactly.
would take me another half hour to set up. So, and a lot of other people probably would be mobile. I don't know if we need to scrounge around and find batteries for people to operate, if they wanted. So that it's just crazy thought. Think about it.
Crazy thought, but
Thank you, Greg.
it would
Yeah.
be helpful probably if folks read the rules. And I don't mean that sarcastically.
I know.
As soon as you go to batteries, then you're a whole different ball game, a different
You're
class.
one
of
Bravo, another one Alpha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we have to decide what kind of class we want it to be. And if you're a club, you're like a multiple transmitter, 1, 2, 2 or 3 or 4, and generally Alpha.
I think for a club, I think Steve's got the idea. The question is, where do you put them? So you put them in that site in Irvine if you can't get the park. That's
Right.
another way.
Yeah.
I had a comment from one of our new members. He lives up in Anaheim Hills, and up above his house, on top of the hill, there's a private area there with pavement and all sorts of fun things. And he thinks we maybe should talk to the owner of this private place because it's got height above average terrain. It's the highest spot in the neighborhood up in the Anaheim Hills, and it would be a feasible project. The problem is it's a long ways away from here.
Ideally, we're essentially a Mission Viejo-based club, even though we draw from all areas. Ideally, it would be centrally located in Mission Viejo. If we went to Irvine, I don't know if that would cause any hard feelings with IDEC or the various other clubs that quasi-stake out territory. So I don't know. It's just
Oh yeah.
those are things to consider, and I'm not saying it's a no-go or don't do it. Just more things to consider.
Yeah, Ray, IDEC is based out of City Hall Police Headquarters on the other side of town. I have a feeling that wouldn't be a problem for them. And you can ask your technical director since he's a member of IDEC as well.
Oh,
But,
I'm completely aware of that. It's just I have this thing about not encroaching on other people's territories. Our IDEC is Irvine, not just City Hall. So just some thought. Again, maybe it's not valid, but something to be considered.
Anyway, at this point, Heiko says, I'm ducking out. If you guys want to stick around, feel free, have fun. And remember, if you get on GoToMeeting and check in with Eric has a regular license. Some of us have temporary licenses. Other than that, if you want to get on Skype, look us up on Skype and we can communicate that way. Eric, Tony, who is still there, and Ray especially, thank you guys all very much. Back to whoever wants it.
Thanks.
Well, I guess since I was originally meeting moderator, I can stick around if anybody else has something to talk about.
I was late. Did anybody talk about testing?
Yes.
Oh yeah, testing is a good topic. I got some people that want to take tests.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. That's your area.
Easy, Don.
Steve, you know that there's 2 clubs already doing it?
Yeah, they
Do you
are.
know that there's 2 clubs? Yep. One at a time. Yep. And they make them show the cell phone around the room to prove that there's nobody else there and no cheap materials. And I was thinking of you saying, oh, that's crazy.
I'm taking.
Yeah, I have had requests. May I, Steve? I have had requests through Gordon West and some others who want to upgrade and want to get new licenses. And my suggestion has been to them that we have the VEs necessary. We need to find a place that we all think is reasonably safe where we can do this, do the paperwork, and submit it to the ARRL or W5YI and have it done. But it has to be done no more than 1, 2, at the very most 3 people testing and only 3 or 4 people doing the testing. What do you think, Steve? Well, Steve, if we have a nice, quiet, open area, large enough to host anywhere between 1 and 4 people taking a test, and at least 4 or 5 people doing the testing, all it takes is a reasonable amount of open space where some one sucker, aka me, can bring the paperwork around, everybody else wash their fingers and do the testing. We can actually do it in the process where there are people. Does that sound like something we can do to you? Okay. Yeah. Okay. We can make that a requirement.
It's reasonable.
I'm here if you need me for the exams. So I just
But
raised my
Alex,
hand
you're
that
only
I'm
a
available.
technician.
Yeah, right.
Of that lighting yet.
I am, but I'm faster than light.
I'm sorry. You guys, you have to understand, Alex and I are both from the other side of the water.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. You're okay. I do think, remembering we started off earlier with using both W5YI and ARRL. I think we should take advantage of both of the systems. And I'm even willing to try to qualify for the W5YI one and see where we can go from there. And Gregory, quit drinking all that red wine.
I
Back to you.
think I think quite a few of our people are W5YI as well. I know I am. What I'm not
Most
familiar
are.
with is the paperwork, which I suspect is slightly different than the ARRL paperwork, but probably not terribly different. You know,
Most of us. Oh, okay. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. No, that's how I got my ARRL VE thing, was through W5YI. And we do have friends who are members who can help us with that.
well, then you should still be W5YI qualified.
Well, I am.
It
As a
doesn't
VE,
expire.
I
Oh,
want to, Ray, what I want to do is I want to be a VEC. I want to be able to coordinate this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So that I can help Steve, if nothing else.
Hey guys, if I may.
That's up to you.
Hey, 6 UVR, you got to put your camera on, dude.
Oh, no, you don't want to look. Hey, Tim, you don't want to look at Stevie. Trust me.
Oh, yeah. I'll look at all. You guys are all beautiful. You're all beautiful.
Well, I don't know that you need YouTube anymore.
Yeah, you can probably kill that.
Well, that's different. Yeah, and hi to Dawn, as well as Gregory and Alex and Tim. I see a lot of pictures here. Hey, Bill, KG6 IAM, who are you?
No, wait, I had to mute, and, you know, I'm slow at this. Who am I? Let's see, I live next to Tom Minnie, Pinky, and he got his interested in amateur radio, I'd say 3 or 4 years ago. And I've had a license since like high school, although I did not renew one time, and for a long time it wasn't licensed, but I'm back in it now. I typically operate on 40 meters, but not a lot. So does that answer your question there, Heiko?
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. And yes, it does to a certain extent. There's the GordoNet at 8:30 on 7.250. If you haven't found that yet, it's always interesting and always fun, but very busy. But I'm glad to have you on here. I just hadn't seen you out here before.
Oh, we've talked a couple times at meetings and so on and so forth. Yeah, I am aware of the net, not the GordoNet daily. Occasionally I check into Sunday morning now.
Thank you. I don't do 40 anymore because my antenna is way below that or way above it. It just doesn't like 40. Anyway, anybody else have any comments?
By the way, there was a comment on there from I'm not looking at it now because I killed the tab. Our resident April, our drone operator, said good job on the the YouTube part of it.
Oh, okay. So there you go, Stevie. April says thank you.